All right, we're about to get started. Hello, 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 beautiful and amazing people. Good evening. Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm super excited that you guys are here tonight. So, I have a short presentation that I have planned for you guys for tonight. Now, if you guys are intentional about building generational wealth, if you are intentional about financial freedom, time freedom, and location freedom, if you are intentional about wanting to know the secrets of how the wealthy are able to protect their assets, then you are in the right place. Because what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to teach you everything that I know, not everything, but I'm going to teach you how to set up a trust. And I'm also going to show you the steps that you need to take in order to protect your assets, right? I know that you guys have businesses, homes, cars, cash, and those assets need to be protected. So I'll show you the steps that you need to take with one of the most powerful entities in the entire world, which is a trust fund. So a lot of you guys might have heard the term trust or use the word trust fund, and you're going to know how to actually use it to your advantage so that you can change the trajectory of your life as well as the lives of your children and your family and your spouses. So, without further ado, my name is Christina Yvette. I'm the founder of Seven Ways to Wealth, where we teach you how to build wealth the right way using a trust. So, I'm going to dive right into the presentation, you guys. So, I'm going to go through it briefly. It'll take me about an hour. And then I'm going to answer all of your questions. So if you have any questions, just save them for Q&A and I'll be able to provide clarity at that time. So give me a moment. I'm going to pull up my presentation. All right, hopefully you guys can see my screen here. So let's just dive right in. Mhm. Okay. So once again, I'm Christina Yvette. I'm the founder of Seven Ways to Wealth. So I have been a trustee for over 10 years, 11 years to be exact this year. So since 2015. And the way that I actually became a trustee was by way of real estate. So originally, my career is in nursing. I was a registered nurse for 8 years. And my second year into nursing, I was very frustrated and burnt out already with my career. And I was actually living paycheck to paycheck. I was making $21 an hour as a registered nurse at a hospital that was short staffed in Florida. And I was young at that time. So I was like 23 years old, 23, 24. And I was frustrated because I realized that I was spending more time in the hospital with my patients and coworkers than I was at home with my 1-year-old baby. So when I realized that, I was frustrated, I was upset, I was overwhelmed, I was stressed, and I asked myself, what is it that I need to do in order to get my time back? Because my son is being raised by my mom. I'm not raising him because I'm in the hospital 5, 6 days a week, 12, 13 hours, sometimes even as high as 16 hours. Okay, I've done 16-hour shifts. So I told myself at that time, I said, I need a second stream of income. I need to be able to not only rely on my paycheck at the hospital, I need to be able to get money coming in from another source. And when I realized that, I didn't know what that other source was going to be. So one day I was driving to work and on the radio, I hear this guy. His name is Dan Merrill. He's a big time real estate guru. He says, do you want to learn how to flip houses? And so that spark just, it sparked that fire in my brain and that light bulb went off. And I said to myself, yeah, I want to learn how to flip houses. So he was having a 3-day seminar. I signed up for the seminar, went to the seminar, and I learned so much in 3 days than I have ever known in my entire life about real estate. And I fell in love with real estate, and I said, real estate is what I need to do. 6 months after that, attending that seminar, I bought my first property. I bought my first property using zero money. I didn't use any of my own cash because I didn't even really have cash, to be honest, right? Living paycheck to paycheck. And I was fortunate enough to where I had a mentor, and my mentor just so happened to be a hard money lender. So he lent me 100% of the money so that I was able to purchase this house, and I fixed it and I flipped it. So I bought it for $89,000. I sold it for $235,000. But before I sold it, that mentor told me, Christina, you need to put this property into a trust. And I said, why? Like, I don't even know what a trust is. Right. And so he told me, he's like, anything can happen. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. Now, you have to understand at that time, I was 25 years old, right? So I'm young, 25, never done real estate, never owned a property before. I don't know what I don't know. But my mentor, he's in his 50s. He has $200 million worth of property. He lends money for a living with real estate. He knows all of his property is in trust. So I said to myself, I am going to follow his lead and I'm going to set up a trust and I'm going to put this property into a trust. Why? Because at that time, you have to understand that I'm flipping this property. It's going under renovation. There's construction happening 6 days a week, and anything can happen with the construction crew, with the subcontractors or the contractors. Imagine if there's a slip and fall or somebody steps on a nail, right, and loses a limb. Then what? They're going to come after me. They're going to come after my property. They're going to come after my LLC. So I took that house out of the LLC and I placed it into a trust so that it's protected just in case someone was injured on the job. I would not be liable and they would not have the ability to take my house away. So that was in 2015. And I have been operating within trust ever since 2015. So I am here to teach you guys the steps that you need to take so that you guys can better understand what a trust is, right? So let's continue. Ooh. A quick disclaimer. So this is not legal advice or tax advice, okay? So I am not a licensed attorney or a certified public accountant. So I am teaching from a standpoint of trusteeship, okay? So how do these big companies like Trump, Microsoft, Amazon, ExxonMobil, Berkshire Hathaway, right? How is it that they pay no taxes, right? So the answer is that all of those companies, they have trust within their structure. So if those companies have trust within their structure, you also need to think about having trust within your structure. So let's talk about what a trust is, okay? So a trust is an entity, okay? It is a living, breathing entity, just like you. You are a living, breathing entity. Out here in society, you are operating as an entity by way of using your first and last name plus your social security number. The trust is going to operate in society using the trust name and the trust social security number, which is an EIN, and an employer identification number, which is that 9-digit number that the IRS issues to the trust. Okay. So it's the same thing. Now, whatever you can do as a natural person, the trust can do. So if you can buy a house, the trust can buy a house. If you can build credit, the trust can build credit. If you could write a book, the trust could write a book. So there's no limitations to what a trust can do. Now, how does this entity actually come into existence, right? Well, it comes into existence by way of a contract. So this is what we call a contractual entity where you're going to set up a contract and you're going to get it legalized. And that legalization is going to create the entity that you can now operate. Okay. Now, when this contract, it is called an indenture. Okay, so the word indenture means agreement. Now, there's two very important parts. There's several different sections to this contract. Okay, the contract has bylaws, the contract has a declaration, the contract has schedules, a constitution, certifications. So you need to be able to be mindful of what a declaration is, right? So a declaration is where you're declaring what it is and what it is not that you're setting up in this contract. So you're declaring, hey, in this contract, I'm setting up a trust. I'm not setting up a general partnership, a limited liability company, or a corporation, right? Or a joint venture. The second thing is when it comes to the contract, you have your bylaws, which are your rules and regulations of how you want the trust to operate, right? Which is super important. So now that we know that it is a contract, let's now understand the different parties involved in this contract, right? So there's three parties that I want you to be aware of. The first one is the grantor, that's the creator of the trust. You might hear the term settler or trustor, okay? And so when you need to understand is that this individual is the person who's creating the trust and actually putting the first asset into the trust. The second party is the trustee. That's the individual who's going to be controlling the trust. So the trustee is going to be doing all of the day-to-day operations, the administration, the management of the assets, and in full control over those trust funds that are inside of the trust, okay? And the last party that I want you to be aware of is the beneficiary. So that is the inheritor of the trust. Those are the individuals that are going to be receiving the assets that are placed inside of the trust, okay? And those assets are going to be directly owned by the trust, but the beneficiaries get to benefit from those assets. So they'll receive things like distributions. They'll receive things like gifts from the trust organization. And the trustee is the one who is going to be administering all of those things, right? So the grantor creates the trust not for themselves, but for the benefit of someone else, which is the beneficiaries, okay? So now that you understand the different parties involved in the trust, let's understand the different types of trust. There are hundreds of different types of trust, okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to understand certain categories that every single trust falls under. The first category that I want to share with you guys is express versus implied. So an express trust is a written trust, okay? Where you have that contract, it's in black and white, you can physically touch it and you'll sign it. Versus an implied trust is a verbal agreement, so you don't actually physically have that contract, okay? So it's oral. The next category that I want to share with you guys is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature. And with that simple trust, you cannot hold trust funds inside of the trust. So all of the money that goes inside of the trust needs to be distributed to the beneficiaries versus the other type, which is a complex trust. So a complex trust is longer in nature, so that means that there's more terms and conditions. And because it is longer in nature, what happens is the trustee is not required to distribute all the money, so you can actually hold funds inside of that trust, which is beautiful. The next category that I want to give you is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make changes for or make decisions for the trust that are not embedded inside of the contract, right? Versus a non-discretionary, which means that the trustee cannot make any decisions that are not set forth inside of that contract. The next category that I want to give you guys is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust is a trust where you have all of your state statutes and codes, right? And with those state statutes and codes, what happens is they have to be embedded inside of the contract. So with those statutory trusts, what happens is those laws, right, those statutes and codes are inside of the contract, which restricts that trust to where it can only be used in that one state, okay? So one, it can only be used in that one state, and the second thing is that it automatically becomes a part of the public records because with a statutory trust, you have to register it with the state, okay? Versus a non-statutory trust. So a non-statutory trust is where one, there are no state statutes and code embedded inside of the contract, which means it's not restricted to where it can only be used in that one state. So that means that you can use it in the entire nation. You can use it in all of the US states plus all of the US territories, which is a beautiful thing. Now, the next category that I want to share with you guys is, hold on one second, is revocable versus irrevocable. So with a revocable trust, when we're talking about revocability, we are referring to one of the parties. The party that we're referring to is the grantor. So what we're saying that is with a revocable trust, the grantor can make changes to the trust. So they can make changes, they can make amendments. They are able to remove trustees and beneficiaries. They are able to take back assets that they have placed into the trust, and they're able to shut down or terminate the trust at any point in time. So that grantor has a lot of power and control. Because of that, usually with this type of trust, the grantor is also going to be the trustee and the beneficiary, which means that they are serving as all three parties. So this type of trust is seen as their alter ego, right? And so this type of trust is actually going to put them in a position to where they are able to they're able to have all this flexibility, but it is detrimental because if there's any type of creditors that want to come after the grantor, they're able to do that. They're able to come after the grantor because it's seen as their alter ego, right? That's definitely what you do not want. Because let's just say that somebody tries to sue the revocable trust, right? If that revocable trust was to end up in court, the judge will pierce through the trust. And if the judge pierces through the trust, that means that they're going to force you to produce the trust in court, which means that it automatically becomes a part of the public records, which means that you have to now disclose everything that's inside of the trust. So they're going to know who the beneficiaries are, what assets you have inside of the trust, what the net worth of the trust is, what are the provisions inside of the trust. So it's actually very detrimental for your trust to become a part of the public records for it to be visible to everyone. Now, the next type of trust is an irrevocable trust. That means that the grantor has irrevocability. That means that the grantor cannot make any changes. They cannot remove trustees or beneficiaries. They cannot take back assets, and they cannot terminate the trust. So they have no power and control after they have set up the trust. And they can only serve as the grantor. They cannot be the trustees or the beneficiaries. So this trust is not seen as their alter ego. This trust is seen as a total separate entity from them, which is a powerful thing. Because if the trust is seen as their alter ego, then it's going to be operating with their Social Security. But if it's seen as a separate entity, then that trust is going to operate off of its own EIN, which means that creditors cannot come after that trust. Why? Because you are not the trust is it's not you, which is powerful, right? And so that means that your assets are fully protected with an irrevocable trust, and your assets are not protected with a revocable trust. If an irrevocable trust was to end up in court, the judge will not pierce through an irrevocable trust, which means that your assets are safe, which is what you want, right? So let's talk about the different steps that you need to take in order to actually create a trust, right? So step one is you need to determine the type of trust that you want to create. Now, I just gave you several different categories that your trust is going to fall under. So out of those categories, right, the type of trust that I recommend if you want what we call a bulletproof trust is a trust that is actually express, right? So that means it's in writing. It is discretionary. It is complex in nature. It is non-statutory and it is irrevocable. So it should fall within all five of those categories in order for that trust to truly be bulletproof and to hold up in court. Now that you have determined the type of trust that you actually want to create, then you want to determine the trust name, okay? So you're going to name the trust just like you named anything else, right? And you're going to refrain from using your first and last name. Do not name the trust after yourself. That's the biggest mistake that people make. And the reason being is because of privacy. You don't want anyone to know that you're associated with the trust. You want the trust to stand on its own. So the trust is going to use random different names like Sunflower Estate, okay? Next, you're going to appoint all of the different parties. You're going to appoint the grantor, you're going to appoint the trustee, and typically the trustee is going to be you if you want to have full control over the trust. You're going to appoint the beneficiaries. Typically, the beneficiaries are your children. And lastly, you're going to appoint a successor trustee, which is the individual that's going to take over after you. In the event that something happens to you, meaning that if you become incapacitated, if you decide that you want to resign, or if you transition, then someone needs to pick up where you left off. That individual is your successor trustee. So it's very important that you have a succession plan in place so that you know that your trust is going to continue to be operated well after you have transitioned. The next thing is that you have to create the trust agreement. So that means that you have to create this trust contract, right? And get it established. And the most important thing is your bylaws, right? Your rules and your regulations and your restrictions. One of the ones that we place in there are spendthrift provisions. So spendthrift provisions are where you get to control the money from the grave, meaning that you are going to establish how you actually want this trust to not only how you want it to be ran, but also you get to control how the beneficiaries spend the money that they receive from the trust organization, which is powerful because at the end of the day, you have created this estate. This is your legacy, and you don't want beneficiaries that have very lavish, lavish lifestyle and taste, right? You don't want them to be able to dissipate the wealth that's inside of the trust because they're overspending. So those types of individuals, we call them spendthrifts. So you want to protect the trust and make sure that you're conserving the wealth. So you're going to put spendthrift provisions in place, okay? After you have established your contract, now you have to legalize it. And so what you're going to do is you're going to get it notarized. It is going to require two signatures. It's going to require the grantor signature and it's going to require the first trustee signature. And then the notary is going to go ahead and sign as a witness. They're going to place their seal, and that's what legalizes the trust so that you're able to operate it. So now that the trust is legalized, you're going to go ahead and operate the trust. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to open up a trust bank account. When you're opening up this trust bank account, right, you can open it up at any financial institution that offers a trust account. So it could be a bank, a credit union, or a brokerage. The types of accounts can be checking account, savings account, money market account, or cash management accounts, right? And what's going to happen is you're going to provide them with a certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust exists, and the EIN confirmation letter. You cannot open up a trust fund without an EIN, okay? After you've provided that, then you're going to fund the trust, okay? So you can fund the trust with anything that you would want, any asset, right? So it could be real estate, it can be crypto, it can be cash, it could be an insurance policy, whatever you want to fund the trust. But if you're opening up a bank account, then you're going to have to provide at least the minimum in order to open up the bank account for that trust. So some banks are $100, some banks are zero, some banks are 1,000, some banks are 500, some banks are 5,000. So it just depends on the bank that you decide to open up a bank account with for the trust. Okay, so that is what you call the trust fund, is the bank account where you house all of the funds for the trust. Okay, so that is extremely powerful. So now that you have opened up the trust fund, the last thing that you need to do is you need to go ahead and transfer assets into the trust. This is the mistake that I see people make the most, right? Where they will go and open up a trust, they will create it, and then they would never legally transfer their assets into the trust. So you do not want to be that person where you make the biggest mistake seen in society, okay? So the way that you are going to transfer assets, it depends on the asset, okay? So let's just say that you have a property. It's real estate, right? So with this real estate, when you purchase the real estate, you receive the deed. And so what you need to do is you need to transfer that deed from your personal name into the name of the trust. And the way that you're going to do that is by redeeding the property over. After you have redeeded the property over, then what you're going to do is you're going to record it with the county recorder's office. They are going to now update the public records to represent that the trust is the new owner of the property. That is legally transferring that property after you have listed it as an asset in the trust. That is the most important step. If you do not do this step, and if you don't do it correctly, then your house is not going to be protected by the trust, okay? So what can a trust actually protect you from, right? Well, a trust, right? The reason that you're going to create a trust is for privacy and protection. So once again, with this primary residence, right, you are seen as the owner and it's all over the public records. So you want a sense of privacy and obscurity. So you want to be able to remove yourself as the owner so people don't know that you're the owner, so that just in case they want to come after you personally, then what's going to happen is they are not going to be able to, right? So with that being said, we have what can a trust actually protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcy, divorce, foreclosures, heavy taxes, and lawsuits and probate, right? So let's talk about a few. So one is divorce, right? A lot of people, they are in a situation where they get divorced, and inside of the divorce, right, what happens is one spouse will end up with everything, the other spouse will end up with nothing. And what's included in the divorce is all of your personal assets and your liabilities. So that's everything that's in your personal name. The way that a trust can actually protect you is because you are not the trust is not you. Anything that you place inside of that trust is protected and cannot be pulled into that divorce. So if you put a house in there, if you put $500,000 in there, if you put a car in there, none of those things can be included in your divorce, which means that that ex-spouse cannot, make claims to those assets because they're not owned by you directly, which is great. Now, the next one is heavy taxes, right? Now, a lot of people are giving away half of their income to the IRS, right? And especially in states like California and New York, right? They're giving away 40 to 50%. So you want to be able to put yourself in a position to where you can actually keep some of that money so that you can allocate it somewhere else, right? So with that being said, a trust can protect you from heavy taxes because there are things like inheritance tax. There are things like death tax, right? And so you get to avoid those taxes, right? There are also very special and unique trusts where you can actually give up to 60% of your annual gross income to that type of trust so that you don't have to pay taxes on 100% of your income. So it's powerful for you to incorporate trust within your current structure so that you can actually have the tax advantages that come with operating in trust. Now, the next one is lawsuits, right? What I will tell you is do not wait until you're getting sued in order to protect yourself from a lawsuit, right? It is so detrimental. A lot of people, they don't know that we live in the United States of America, which is super, it's like sue friendly, right? Everybody wants to sue you, right? Your sibling wants to sue you, your coworker, your employer, your employee, your clients, your customers, your neighbor, right? Everyone, your tenants, everyone wants to sue you, right? And so don't wait until you're getting sued in order to protect yourself. That is just the most important thing, right? So let me give you a quick example. Um, when it comes to protecting yourself, right? What you need to understand is that let's just say you're a business owner, right? You're running an LLC, right? What does LLC stand for? Because a lot of us, we are business owners. So what does LLC stand for? You guys can come off mute and let me know. Okay, so P says a limited liability company. That is correct, right? So if LLC stands for limited liability company, right? So what we're saying here is that the company has limited liability. So if the company has limited liability, who do you think has the other half of that liability? So you guys could come off mute, let me
You
know
have
who.
it. The business owner.
The business owner, exactly. Yep, that's true. So the business owner will be liable for what happens, right, to that LLC. So if you have a client that ends up wanting to sue you, then what's going to happen is they're going to go after your company. Do you know how easy it is for them to find out who the owner of that company is? It is so easy for them to find out. And the reason being is because you are on the public records. All they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website, put your business name, and all of your information shows up. Why? Because you're the business owner, right? And so you listed yourself as the authorized member of that LLC. Now that this client has decided to sue you, right? They're suing you now, let's just say, and you're going to court, and now there's a judgment for $500,000. If there's a judgment for $500,000, that means that they're going to come after the LLC and the LLC is liable. If the LLC can't cover the $500,000, then what the judge can do is the judge can pierce through the corporate veil. If the judge pierces through the corporate veil, then what can happen is they are able to go after the authorized member, which is you. And now they're going to go after you for the 500,000. Why? Because they pierced through that little bit of protection that you had, right? The little umbrella that you had, the corporate veil, they pierced right through it. So now they're going to come after you personally, and what they can come after you for is all of your personal assets. So meaning your house, right? Your house is in your personal name. What can they do? They can seize your property. They can seize your vehicles. They can seize your jewelry. They can seize anything that you have inside of that home, right? And then they can also garnish your entire bank account, and they can garnish all of your wages for your W-2. So you don't want to be put in that position, right? Unfortunately, what I've seen is that people will wait until they're getting sued in order to protect themselves from a lawsuit, which is highly detrimental, right? So you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait. You want to protect yourself now, okay? So let me show you a quick, hold on one second. Let's get back to the slides.
Just a quick story of why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost a career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my third bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protect it. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
So it is so important, once again, for you not to wait until you're getting sued because it happens unexpectedly, right? So the last one that I want to talk to you guys about is probate. So I have a question for you. My question is, the house that you live in right now, if something were to happen to you and this house is in your personal name, how do you expect that house to be transferred to your son or your daughter's name if you didn't wake up tomorrow? So that is the question. Let me know what your response is. You guys could come off mute, let me know.
This is Fred. I want to ask, could it have like a revocable, I'm not sure if that's the right terms, revocable trust, so that when you die, that property now goes into that revocable trust and is now preserved for your children?
Yeah, so my question is currently right now, right? So the property is not in a revocable trust. The property is in your personal name. So how is the property going to be transferred if it's in your personal name?
Doesn't it go into
So,
probate?
It's going to go
It's,
through
so they
probate.
haven't.
it go to probate.
Uh-huh. It's going to go through probate. Exactly. So that is what we are trying to avoid, right? So what ends up happening is um it's very challenging, right? So what ends up happening is you are actually leaving it up to a judge for the judge to be able to make the decision if your children will get your property. And I will tell you right now, our children are losing their inheritance. Why? Because we don't have our affairs in order. Why? Because we decided to be the owners of these properties, of this real estate or the business or the car or the bank account with the cash money in it, right? And so you're leaving it up to a judge that doesn't know you. You're leaving it up to a judge that doesn't know your son or your daughter. And now they're going to be subject to probate court. So let me break down and explain to you what probate is, okay? Because it's important for you to know this. Now, In the event that something were to happen to you and you have a house, a car, and cash, right? You have these assets, you have children, right? And your children want to be able to receive these assets, but they can't because the house is not in their name, the car is not in their name, the bank account is not in their name. So they have to go through probate. So what happens is the state where you're a resident, they're going to create an estate for you. Why? Because you didn't do it. Because you didn't create an estate while you were alive. So now they have to be responsible for you. So Texas, New York, the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, California, everywhere, they have all these states, they have to now create an estate for you. Okay. So they're going to name it after you. So if your name is John Smith, they're going to create the John Smith Trust. Okay. And so now that they've created the John Smith estate, it's going straight into probate. And the John Smith estate now needs to be represented by a probate attorney, and it's going to go into probate court. So the first thing that the judge does is the judge is going to pay off your liabilities. Your liabilities are your debt, okay? So that means if you had credit card debt, if you had student loan debt from 30 years ago that you totally forgot about, if you had any personal loans, any lines of credit, any mortgages, any car loans, anything like that, they're going to start paying all of those creditors off. And I will tell you, once they report, that you have transitioned, every creditor will come out of the woodworks to make claims to your estate. Okay? And this is the one that we don't think about. This is the biggest one that we don't think about, right? Even the hospital, right? The medical insurance company, right? The ICU, right? The emergency room. So you never even thought, I know you didn't think about this. You did not think about, well, how much medical bills am I going to rack up at the end of life? Last time I checked, you were sitting in the ICU for 10 days. That's well over $600,000, right? Or maybe a nursing home, a rehabilitation center, right? Or what's another one? An assisted living facility, right? A rehab, anything. We don't know what those medical bills are going to look like, right? The doctors, the emergency room, they come out the woodworks. And then a lot of people tend to think, oh, well, I have insurance. Guess what? The insurance wants to be reimbursed. Oh, I have Medicare and Medicaid. Guess what? Medicare, Medicaid, they want to be reimbursed. They are the first people that are going to be making claims against your estate, right? I have seen it, right? One of my clients recently went through probate, and Medicare took $129,000 from the sale of her father's house. So you need to be able to protect yourself from situations like this, from the unseen. We don't know what we don't know, right? So let me explain this a little bit further. So now, the first thing that happens is the judge is going to pay off your liabilities, whatever you owe, all of your debt, right? And they're going to pay it off with what? With the cash that you have in your bank account. If you don't have enough cash in your bank account, then guess what is the second thing that they do? They liquidate your assets. They begin to sell your property. So that house that you have that you thought your son or your daughter was going to get, the judge decided to sell it. Why? Because they got to pay Medicare $80,000, and you don't have enough in your bank account to cover the reimbursement, right? These are things that you were not aware of, right? And so you have to protect your estate. You have to protect your children and their inheritance, right? And so what you a lot of people, they think that a will is good enough, right? But I will tell you, a will is just a wish list. A will is your last will and testament. It is a legal set of instructions that is designed to automatically be carried out during probate. So if you have a will, just know that you will go to probate. It is automatic, right? But what most people don't know, right, is that obviously the way that we are structured now, we're all going to end up in probate. That's the God honest truth. But probate can be avoided. The only way to avoid probate is by setting up a trust. A trust entity is the only way to avoid probate court. The reason being is because you are the one that transitioned, not the trust. The trust still exists. So now let me paint this scenario for you if you were to set up a trust. So let's just say, yeah, I want to get my affairs in order. Yes, I'm going to set up my trust estate now while I'm living. And now I set up my trust. I transferred my house into my trust. I transferred my car into my trust. I transferred all of my cash that was sitting in that checking account in my personal name. I set up a trust fund account and I transferred all of that cash into my trust fund account, right? And I'm the trustee and I'm operating and I have full control over my assets, right? And I didn't wake up tomorrow. If I didn't wake up tomorrow, then guess what happens? My successor trustee, the individual that was designed and appointed to take over after me, is going to pick up where I left off. They're going to continue to operate the trust, and my children are the beneficiaries. My children are going to benefit from the trust. They're going to receive money from the trust. They're going to receive gifts from the trust. They're going to receive distributions from the trust, whatever the trust is cash flowing, right? And that is a beautiful process because that means that your children are now going to receive 100% of their inheritance versus whatever's left over. Because if you let the state create an estate for you, after the judge is done liquidating your assets, whatever's left over is what your children get. And you don't want your children to just get the leftovers. You want them to receive their entire inheritance, which means that you want to set up a trust so that everything goes to your beneficiaries, which are your children. Last time I checked, you already know that you want your children to receive their inheritance. But instead, because you decided not to get your affairs in order and you want to stay operating the way that you are, which means that I'm the owner of my business, I'm the owner of my house, right? Then what's going to happen is you're going to drag your children through probate court, and you have to understand what's happening at that time. They just lost the most important person of their life. Right? I know because I lost my mother. They lost the most important person of their life. And instead of you allowing them to grieve, guess what's going to happen? You're dragging them through the probate court for them to be able to fight for mom's house. You don't want that to happen. You don't want your children to have to fight to keep mom's house, fight to keep dad's house. You want them to grieve in peace and avoid the entire probate process. So if you decide to create your estate now while you're living, to protect your assets, to list your children as the beneficiaries, right? Then you avoid the entire probate process. And one perfect thing that I want to tell you is that at the end of the day, right, your children are not going to go to probate, and all of those creditors, they cannot come after your trust estate, which means that all of that debt that you had, the medical bills, the student loans, the credit cards, right? All of that debt dies with you, meaning that those creditors will have to discharge that debt because they have nothing to come after. Why? Because they can only go after things in your personal name. You have to understand that you are not the trust is not you, which means that none of those things that are inside of the trust are in your personal name. And last time I checked, the trust did not transition, you did. That trust is designed to outlive you. That trust is going to remain for another 100 years. That trust is for generational wealth, okay? It is there to reach many generations into the future. That is your foundation. So let's dive right back in to, hold on one second. Let me look for my slides here. So let's dive right back into the presentation. So once again, just to recap on this section, right? We are protecting our assets, and the way that we're going to do that is through a trust, you guys, okay? So let's continue on. The next thing that I want you guys to know about is the wealth building formula, okay? So I have three pillars here. I have structure, I have credit, and I have invest, okay? So this is how you're going to build wealth using a trust, okay? Remember, I told you came to the right place if you want to learn how to build wealth the right way, okay? So with these three pillars, let's talk about the first one, which is structure. The first thing that I want to tell you is that if you do not have trust within your structure, you need to get restructured, okay? Now, you want to also have multiple trusts within your structure. So these are the three different types of trust that I recommend. I recommend that everyone have a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So let's break it down briefly. So with the business trust, right? That trust is designed to actually, you can operate it in two ways. So you can actually create a business. So instead of you opening up an LLC, you can create a business trust and you can operate your business that way. So let's just say you do consulting, or you have a real estate company, or you have a brick and mortar, or you do e-commerce, right? Then you are able to establish that business trust and run that business through the business trust. The second way that you can use this trust is through is by way of that business trust actually acting as a holding company. And what it's going to do is it is going to own your LLC or your corporation, right? So remember, I told you that with the LLC, right, it stands for limited liability company, right? And so what happens is you don't want to wait until your LLC is getting sued, right? And so you want to remove yourself as the owner of that business. You do not want to be the owner of your LLC, because remember, they can come after you personally. So what you want to do is you want to establish a business trust and have the business trust now be the owner of that LLC, so that the business trust is fully liable just in case they try to come after the LLC. You need a second layer of protection between you and the business. The business is in the forefront operating, and the business has customers and clients, right? The business, the LLC has products and services, right? And so you do not want to own that business directly. So what you want to do is you want to establish a business trust, because now you're going to remove yourself from the Secretary of State's website. You're going to add the business trust as the owner, and now the business trust is actually going to own that LLC. In case that LLC is sued, then they're going to go after the business trust, which is very, very, very hard to sue a trust, okay? So that means that you get to now be protected, right? Your identity is protected because no one knows that you own that business, okay? So you want an entity to own that business, okay? So now let's just say that your LLC generated $100,000. That $100,000 can go straight to the owner. The owner is the business trust. So now the $100,000 went straight into the business trust, right? So one thing that I love about trust, right, is that you get to spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers. So if 100,000 came in, we're going to spend the money first. So what does it look like, right? Well, you have administration expenses, you have operating expenses, you have management expenses, right? There are so many different expenses that you have for the business trust. Let's just say that you have $30,000 in expenses. So now that is a tax deductible, right? So you get to deduct $30,000 out of that $100,000, and now you're left with a balance of $70,000. Now, normally with a trust, that is a for-profit entity that you have to file taxes, okay? You have to pay taxes on it, and it files a 1041. So with that being said, what's going to happen is you're going to have to pay taxes on the 70,000, right? A trust is taxed anywhere between 10% upwards of 37%. So one thing, the second thing that I absolutely love about the trust is that you get to actually distribute the money, right? So you get to do a distribution, and all of the money that you distribute, you do not have to pay taxes on, right? So with that being said, the trust has a beneficiary, and that distribution is going to go to the beneficiary. So what we do is, the way that we structure it is, we're going to have the family trust be the beneficiary of the business trust. The reason being is because the business trust is generating the money, and it needs to then move that money to the family trust so that we're able to provide for the family. So with that being said, what happens now is, remember that $70,000, we have to pay taxes on it. If you don't want to pay taxes on it, you're going to have to distribute it to the beneficiary. So that 70,000, we're going to distribute it to the beneficiary, which is the family trust. So now that that 70,000 is distributed, that means that we're left with $0 on the business trust. Why? Because $100,000 came in, 30,000 was deducted due to operating expenses, and 70,000 was deducted due to distribution, right? And so there's $0 that's left, which means that you have a 0% tax liability for that business trust. So now let's move down to the family trust. With the family trust, right? This is where you're going to have all of your personal assets, like your house, your car, your cash money, your stocks, your bonds, your insurance policies, your jewelry, your furniture, things like that, right? And this is where you're going to list your children as the beneficiaries, okay? Now, with the family trust, right? We just had $70,000 that came in. The beautiful thing about the trust is that we're going to spend the money first, and we're taxed on the leftovers. So what's going to happen is that with this money, right? What's going to happen is, we have a lot of expenses for the family, right? We have grocery, we have mortgage, we have utilities, we have property taxes, we have kids tuition, we have a car note, we have insurance, all of these things. So all of this is considered operating expenses and administration expenses. And so that's going to be deducted from the 70,000. So let's just say it costs 60,000 in order to provide for the family. So what's going to happen is, we have a tax deduction there, and so we get to deduct 60 out of the 70,000, and now we only have 10,000 left. So normally that 10,000 will be taxed at 10%, which means that we're only going to have to pay $1,000 in taxes out of 100,000 that came in, which is beautiful, right? That's only 1%, right? And so what can also happen is, if you don't want to pay that $1,000, right? Then let's just say that you are a little bit more strategic, and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to do a contribution, right? So trust can do distributions and contributions. So I'm going to do a charitable contribution to a charity of my choice. And that charity of your choice is going to be your own charity, okay? So you're going to create a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. This is going to operate as a charity, as a nonprofit. It can operate as a church. It can operate as a ministry. It can operate as a school. So it can be for religious purposes. It can also be for educational purposes or for charitable purposes. So whatever your philanthropic endeavors are, you can do it through the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Now, this trust, right, is automatically exempt from federal taxes. The reason being is because of the separation between church and state. So you do not have to apply for for exemption, right, for tax exemption, and that's on the federal level. And obviously that's because of the separation between church and state, right? Like your traditional nonprofits that have to apply with the 1023. So what you want to do is, with this type of trust, right, you need to understand that you are automatically exempt, meaning you do not have to file taxes federally with the IRS for any money that comes into the organization, as long as this money is labeled as a tithe, offering, or a gift. If it's labeled, or a donation. So if it's labeled as a donation, a tithe, a offering, a gift, you do not have to pay taxes on all the money that comes into the organization that way. If it's labeled as income, then anything over 5,000 you do have to file. So you just have to be very vigilant about how you're going to document how the funds come into that organization, okay? One thing that I want you to know is that the IRS will allow you, let's just say that you're a W-2 income earner, right? The IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to a charity of your choice, and that could be your own charity, which is your tax-exempt nonprofit charitable trust, okay? So if you're going to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income, then let's just say that you make 100,000. You donate 60 to the trust, that means that you only have 40 left, which means that you're only going to be taxed on 40,000 of the 100,000, which means that you're going to be saving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on taxes, which is extremely powerful. That is what you want, right? You want to put yourself in that position. So let's move on to the second one, which is credit. So what I want you to know is that you want to put yourself in a position to where you're leveraging OPM, other people's money, specifically the bank's money, okay? So you have the opportunity to establish business credit for the trust. The business trust can build credit off of the EIN, and you want to be able to leverage a second credit profile. You don't want to only rely on your personal credit, because typically you will get lower lines of credit and credit limits versus a business will get higher lines of credit limits, like 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, $300,000, okay? So just be mindful of that, because you need to understand that the bank is getting rich because they're leveraging OPM, other people's money, which is your money. Every single time that your money goes into the bank, your money is not sitting there, even though you think it is, right? We live in a fractional reserve system, which means that with the fractional reserve, only a fraction of your money is actually sitting in the bank at any given time. So it looks like you have $1,000 in your bank account, but you really only have 100, because they have lent out $900, right? And so if you understand that the bank is receiving a loan from you because your money went direct deposit into the bank and they don't have to actually physically have that money in there, then you need to understand that the bank is getting rich off of OPM, off of your money, right? And what are they doing? They are lending it out, right? For mortgages, for student loans and car notes and things of that nature, right? And they're paying, they're charging high interest, right? So you need to reverse engineer and do the same thing. Now let's move on to the last one, which is invest. So when it comes to you creating your trust, right? So you got your structure, you got your credit, now it's time to invest, right? Now, when you are investing, right, these are my two favorite assets. One is an index universal life insurance policy, and the second one is real estate, okay? So when it comes to this types of assets, let's talk about the IUL policies, right? So IUL is index universal life. Now, a lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead, but in all actuality, life insurance is supposed to be used when they are living. There are so many living benefits to life insurance, right? And I'll just briefly tell you a few of them. So the first one is that you have living benefits, meaning that if something were to happen to you, you can access up to, I think, 80-90% of your death benefit. So it comes with a death benefit, right? So that means that your life is insured, and if anything happens to you, let's just say your death benefit is $1 million, your family's going to receive $1 million when you transition, okay? But if you become terminally ill, then you can get like $800,000 to $900,000 of that $1 million, okay? So that is a beautiful thing. Now, your money is going to grow in there tax-free, right? And your money is protected, meaning that if somebody tries to sue you, they cannot take the money that you have in your life insurance policies. Now, this is, there's liquidity with your index universal life. So there is another type of account within your insurance policy, and that account is called cash value. So that means that you're going to be building cash value inside of your insurance policy. Now, what is cash value? Well, that is whenever you're making your premium payments, right? A certain percentage of it is going to go to your cash value. So let's just say that that your premium is $100 a month, and the way that your policy is structured is an 80-20 split. So that means that 20% is going to go to the insurance carrier, and that is the cost of insurance, right? And then 80% is going to go inside of your cash value, inside of your life insurance policy. Now, you have to understand that that life insurance policy, right, that has that cash value in there, that cash is going to start to accumulate, okay? And so you're going to now be accumulating cash inside of your cash value. Every month, $80 plus $80 plus $80 plus $80, right? And so that means that the cash is going to begin to grow in there. Now, one of the most beautiful things about this policy here, which is an index universal life, is that that cash value is going to now earn compound interest. And the way that it earns compound interest is by mirroring the stock market. So in the actual name of this policy, you see the word index. Index means it's referring to an indice in the stock market. So every single the stock market has many different indices, right? It has the Dow Jones, it has the NASDAQ, it has the S&P 500. So when it comes to this type of policy, let's just say that you are going to be tracking the S&P 500, right? The S&P 500, it stands for Standard & Poor's 500, which is referring to the top 500 companies in the United States, right? So that is your Facebook, your Amazon, your Tesla, your IBM, your Apple, right? So those companies perform very well. And what happens is typically the stock market is going to do about 8 to 10%. So instead of your money being directly invested into the stock market, that's too risky, because what if the stock market crashes? What happens is you now are going to be growing your money risk-free, because the life insurance carrier is going to match the market, right? So for example, whatever's inside of your cash value, let's just say you have $10,000 in there and the stock market just did 8%, you're going to get an 8% return on that $10,000, which means that your money is being placed in a place where it is actually going to grow. And that is what you want. You want to put yourself in a position to where you're paying yourself first and you're parking your money in places where it's going to grow. It's going to bring back friends, right? It's going to double and triple and quadruple, right? And another thing that I want you to know is that the banks, and we're talking about Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase, the big three, right? Those banks, their number one asset is life insurance policies. So look it up. It's called BOLI, BOLI, which stands for bank-owned life insurance, okay? So these big banks, right, all of their money and how they're growing their wealth is through life insurance. So let me ask you a question. If the bank's number one asset is life insurance, what do you think your number one asset should be?
Life insurance.
Exactly. You got that right. Okay, awesome. Okay. Thank you for answering that question. I appreciate you. So it should be life insurance. Why? Because the banks are getting rich off of life insurance. You need to be getting rich off of your life insurance policies as well. Okay. So when it comes to the The trust is going to be the owner of your life insurance policy. You are going to be the insured. So that means that your life is insured. The trust is going to be the payer of the premiums every single month. And the trust is going to be the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. Just in case anything happens to you, that death benefit is going to go to the trust fund, which is what you want to happen. Okay. So let's move on. And now let's talk about real estate because that's my favorite thing to talk about. I absolutely love real estate, right? I come from very humble beginnings, okay? So I come from a place where I was living in an abandoned building, right? Me and my family, we were squatters. There was no utilities. And I had to put myself in a position to where I could make money to help my parents, right? So I started working at McDonald's, 14 years old, lied on my job application, said I was 16 so I can get this job so I can start making money, right? And I fell in love with entrepreneurship at that time, right? And so now fast forward when I created my first company, it was a real estate, not was, it still is, right? So my first company is a real estate investment company, and that company, the portfolio is 7 figures in real estate, okay? So with that being said, I have bought dozens and dozens of properties throughout the 10 years, and majority of those properties I bought with zero down. So let me teach you a strategy that I have done dozens and dozens and dozens of times, okay? Where you can acquire real estate zero down, okay? Now, one thing that I need you to know is that the trust can own real estate. The trust can get a mortgage. The trust can get a home equity line of credit, okay? The trust can have credit, okay? So you need to put the trust in a position to where it can sustain itself. You do not want to sustain the trust. You do not want to be pouring your W-2 income into the trust. That is not what we're doing here. The trust needs to have its own assets, okay? So with that being said, what is going to happen is the trust is going to acquire real estate, okay? Now, let's just say that we found a property. It is a fourplex, right? And now we're going to go ahead and buy this fourplex for the trust, okay? Now, one of the beautiful things about the trust is that it can get a mortgage. One of the mortgages that I like, that I have been using for the last 10 years, almost 11, is a DSCR. Right. And so the DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio loan. Okay. That is a type of mortgage that you can get for an entity. Okay. So you can't get a DSCR for a normal person like you and I. It has to be for an entity. So specifically the trust. Okay. Now with the DSCR, what's going to happen is they're going to give you up to 80% of the purchase price. Right. So they're going to give you a nice chunk of change for you acquiring this property. So now that the DSCR is going to give you 80%, you're going to have to find that 20% somewhere else. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to be building business credit so that we're able to obtain a credit card for 50,000 or 100,000. So let's just say that we got a credit card, right, for $50,000. And with this credit card, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to liquidate the credit card, okay? Now that we have liquidated the credit card, that $50,000 is sitting inside of our bank account. So what we're going to do is the first place that we're going to put this $50,000 is not straight into real estate. The first place that we're going to put it is in the index universal life insurance policy. You're always going to put yourself in a position to where you're paying yourself first, okay? That is going to take a mindset shift, right? It's going to take a mindset shift to where you are now thinking, instead of me paying all these other people first, I'm going to pay myself first. So that 50,000 is going straight into your IUL policy. And now it's going straight into your cash value. Now your cash value went up by close to $50,000, right? So now what's going to happen is you have just parked that 50,000 in the first place, right? And in that first place, it's going to earn compound interest because it's sitting inside of your cash value, right? And so let's just say the market is doing 9%. That $50,000 is going to earn 9% of interest, right? Which is extremely powerful, right? That is what you want. So now that it's earning 9%, right? Off of the 50,000, what you need to do is now you need to be able to access those funds so that you can use it for a down payment. So you're going to contact the carrier and you're going to let them know, hey, I would like to get a loan. And so remember, this is a liquid asset, right? So there's liquidity in here. You can take that money out at any point in time, right? But we don't recommend that you take the money out. We recommend that you borrow against the money. So you're going to borrow against your cash value. You're going to tell the life insurance company, hey, I need to borrow $49,000, right? Because if you tell them I want to borrow 50, they're going to be like, oh, well, we're not going to let you take out everything, right? So we won't lend you everything. We'll only lend you like 98%. So they're going to give you $48,500 of their own money. So your $50,000 is still sitting inside of your cash value, earning compound interest. They are not going to touch your $50,000. They are going to go into their reserves, into their bank account, and they're going to do a direct deposit, and they're going to direct deposit $48,500 into your account, okay? Direct deposit. So now you have that money, okay? And so now you're able to use it as a down payment for real estate. So now you go to the closing table and you have the 80%, which is the DSCR, and then you have your 20%, which is the money that came from the credit card that you then borrowed out of your IUL policy. So now you just purchased this real estate, right? 4 doors. You just purchased it with 0 down, okay? You do not have to use your own money. I give you my word, okay? Majority of the properties that I have purchased, I did not use my own money at all, didn't have like 0% financing, right? I mean, 100% financing, 0% down, okay? So with that being said, we have just purchased a fourplex, 0 down. Okay, you didn't use any of your own money. Now it's the first of the month. Let's just say every door is giving you $2,000, right? That's $8,000. What is the first thing that you're going to do with this $8,000?
Put it back in your whole life insurance.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. So she's absolutely correct. Yes. So that is the first thing that you want to do. You want to go ahead and put it into your life insurance policy, right? Because you are building cash value, okay? So that $8,000 you're going to pay yourself first. It's so important that you decide to pay yourself first versus paying yourself last. It's going to take a mindset shift if you want to be intentional about building generational wealth, right? You have to set yourself free. You have to set your generations, your lineage, your bloodline. You have to set everybody free, right? And it's going to take one brave person to do that, which is you. So you need to understand this concept of paying yourself first, because the way that we operate right now today is we pay ourselves last. Let's just be honest, right? So let me ask you a question. What is the first thing that you do with your paycheck? Your paycheck, it just got direct deposited into Bank of America. What's the first thing that you're going to do?
Pay your bills.
Pay
Exactly.
bills.
Exactly. All of you guys, y'all just pay y'all bills first. So you mean you pay the utility company, you pay your mortgage company, you pay the car note, you put gas in the car, so you paying a Shell gas station, right? You what else are you doing? You are getting groceries, right? There's so much things that you're doing, right? You paying your rent, your taxes, everything. You pay everybody first. And then whatever is left over is what you get. you are constantly getting the leftovers. Why? Because you decided to pay everybody first, right? And so we need to get away from that way of being, right? Because that is what keeps us in the rat race. That is what keeps us living paycheck to paycheck, to where our whole paycheck come in and we just disperse 80% of it, and now we only have $200 left, and we let that $200 sit inside of our checking account, or we're going to stretch it for the next 2 weeks or the next week, right? That's what I used to do when I was a registered nurse. And I was sick and tired of that. And so it's going to take us to be able to do something very scary. So when your money comes in, you need to pay yourself first. That means that you need to park it in a place where it's actually going to make money. You do not have to work for money. You need to put money in a place where it can work for you. That is what you need to do. It's so important. So for example, with your paycheck, right? Instead of you paying everybody first, you're going to put into your IUL policy, right? So let's just talk about the rental income, because that's what I want to go back to, right? This rental income that just came in, $8,000. Instead of you paying the credit card company and the mortgage, and if there's any utilities or maintenance, what you're going to do is that money's going to go straight into your IUL policy. Now your cash value went up by $8,000, and now you're earning 9% off of that. But then last time I checked, you got to pay the mortgage. So you're going to contact your carrier and let them know that you want to borrow against your cash value and that you need $7,000. They're going to direct deposit $7,000 back into your bank account. Now you're able to pay that minimum for the credit card, and now you're able to cover the mortgage, and whatever is left over is going to sit inside of the trust fund, and you're going to use that for administration, right? And so now what you're going to do is you're going to rinse and repeat. You're going to do it for a second property, for a third property, for a fourth property, until the trust is sustaining itself. Right? That is how you're going to build wealth, right? We learned this when we played the game Monopoly, right? What is the goal? The goal is to collect as many properties as you can, right? And so one thing that I want to tell you once again is that you do not have to trade your time for money. All you have to do is just park it in a place where it's going to bring back friends. So every single dollar, it goes out and it brings back friends, right? Versus the way that society has taught us, right? The society has taught us this. You know that we have been programmed, right? We have been programmed, okay? We have been influenced. We have been institutionalized. And this is what has happened to us, right? So we were born, and then we went through the school system, right? Kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. What did they do? They said, get an education, right? And so we went to a school system and we stayed there for 8 hours a day. And then we went home, we played, we ate, we went to sleep, and then we did it all over again, Monday through Friday. Okay. And we only had the weekends, right, to enjoy ourselves, and then back to Monday, right? And so now that is us being institutionalized in the school system. So now what happens after the school system? You go to college, you get a degree, right? And after that, then what happens? You go into your career, you get a job, right? So now you have a job, and guess what your job is? You're working Monday through Friday, 40 hours, and then you have what? The weekend off, just like how it was when you were in school, K through 12, right? So now they have institutionalized us to show us, hey, you're going to work for 40 hours. You're going to work Monday through Friday, right? You're going to get paid every 2 weeks, right? And you're going to enjoy your weekends, and then you're going to start all over again, weekend and week out, weekend and week out. And for how many years? For 40 years, 40 hours every week for 40 years. And then what happens after 40 years? You get to retire, and we want you to depend on us, right? And so we're going to give you Social Security, right? And so you get to retire at the beautiful age of 65 years old, right? And boom, we're going to give you Social Security at that time, right? Now, that is what, unfortunately, that is the system that we're in, right? And so you can subscribe to the system if you would like, which majority of us have, because that's all that we know. Or you can decide to unsubscribe from the system and tell yourself, hey, I'm not going to work for 40 hours a week for 40 years and retire when I'm 65, right? I'm going to create my own retirement plan now. I'm going to retire myself. I'm going to create my estate. I'm going to build wealth with my estate, and I'm going to gain back my financial freedom. I'm going to gain back my location freedom. I'm going to gain back my income, right? My location freedom, financial freedom, right? You're going to gain that back. And that is so important, right? And that's what we need to do. And that's what I did. So I will be honest with you guys, right? Remember at the beginning of the call, I told you guys that I was a registered nurse, right? And so I was a registered nurse. That was my career. I did everything, right? I went to school, went to college, got a degree, started working in my career, was burnt out, living paycheck to paycheck, couldn't even make ends meet. I was actually stuck in the payday loans, right? So I'm a registered nurse, right? And I'm constantly going when I have my paycheck, getting a $500 payday loan. Why? Because I could not make ends meet. I had a baby that I had to take care of. Why? Because I got pregnant in nursing school. When I tell you I struggled, okay? And so what happened is in I would say like the second year in my career, something clicked inside of me. And I will share this quick story with you. So one day at work, I was working with one of my coworkers. Her name is Audrey. Beautiful woman. And Audrey, at that time, she's 65. Okay. She's 65 years old. That's the golden number. Okay. So Miss Audrey is exhausted. She is so tired that she cannot take care of her patients. So I'm this young 23, 24-year-old, like spring chicken that's like running laps around the whole hospital unit. And so I'm taking care of her patients and my patients, right? And I allowed her to rest. But I'm looking at her and I'm looking at how exhausted she is at work. And I asked her one simple question. I said, Miss Audrey, I said, when are you going to retire? And she says to me, because I'm like, you have been a nurse for 40 years, right? Miss Audrey was a nurse for 40 years. She was 65 years old. I said, you did your time. When are you going to retire? Because you're 65 years old, right? And I see how tired she is. And she talks about her grandchildren, her sons, all this stuff. So I'm like, when are you going to retire? Because it's hard. If I'm 24 years old and I'm tired of standing for 13 hours, I can only imagine a woman who has been doing this for 40 years. So I say to her, I'm like, when are you going to retire? She's like, I'm not ready to retire. I said, why not? She's like, I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half. And I look at her like, what? And what's the math behind that? She said, if I wait until I'm 67 and a half, Social Security is going to give me an extra $300 a month. And I said, oh, okay. I said, so you're going to work for another 2.5 years so that you can get an extra $300 on Social Security? And she's like, yes, Christina, I'm not ready to retire. And I said, okay, Miss Audrey. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad for her because I knew that she wanted to retire. I knew she was exhausted. I knew she put in the time, the effort, the commitment, was the best nurse, right? Went above and beyond for her patients. And she deserved to retire. So I told myself at that point in time, right there, 24 years old, I said, that is not going to be me. I am not going to work until I'm 65 years old. And I'm not going to work in this career much longer, right? So I said, I am going to get out of my career in 10 years. I'm going to retire myself in 10 years. That is what I told myself. Now, I was able to retire myself in 8 years. So I did it 2 years sooner. Thankful to God, but also thankful to my real estate portfolio, right? So everything that I've been telling you about real estate, I did it and I was able to retire myself, right? After 8 years. Now, Miss Audrey, right? One day she was so exhausted that after work, she's coming out of the parking lot at the hospital and she hits the tree. She slams right into the tree in front of the emergency room and she dies on impact. Miss Audrey never made it out of the hospital. Miss Audrey never made it to retirement. Why? That is the definition of working yourself to death. She was so exhausted. She wasn't feeling well. And instead of her saying, I've done my time, my 40 hours, she decided to exhaust herself to the point that the job took it. She couldn't even make it home that day. So I don't want you to be like Miss Audrey. And I decided not to be like Miss Audrey. And I decided that I was going to create my own retirement plan instead of depending on Social Security in my old age. And what I want you to know is that you too can create your own retirement plan instead of depending on Social Security. So let's continue. Now, we need to put ourselves in a position to where we own nothing but control everything. That is extremely powerful. Own nothing but control everything. That is what stewardship is, right? And so a lot of us, we are right now operating in ownership, meaning that we are the proud owner of our house. We're the proud owner of our car. We're the proud owner of our business. You need to move away from that. Okay, what you want is not ownership. What you want is control. We have been programmed to thinking, yes, I want the house with the white picket fence, right? But we have programmed to think that we need to own it. You do not need to own it, right? You don't have to be the owner on paper. That is what the system wants for you. This system was designed to where you're being tracked, right? Meaning that everything that you buy, you're using your name and your social everywhere that you go, everywhere that you work, right? Name and social, name and social, name and social. You need to move away from that. Okay, now what you want is control. Now what you want is stewardship, where you're a good steward of your wealth. So this house, right? The house with the white picket fence that we love, that we work so hard for, this is our biggest investment. Let's just be honest, right? You have a $300,000 house, a $500,000 house. That is your largest investment, okay? Now, if you transition tomorrow, if you didn't wake up tomorrow, let me ask you a question. Is that house still going to be there? Yes or no? If you don't wake up tomorrow.
Yes,
Yes, yes, the house would
Okay.
still be there.
Exactly. Thank you so much for answering the question. So the house is still going to be there. That means that that house is going to outlive you. So in all actuality, it's not ownership that's your true desire. What your true desire is that you want to be able to control that house while you're living. You want full control over that property. And that's what a trust estate can do for you. Why? Because you control the trust and the trust owns the property. So you have full control over that house, right? Versus ownership. So we need to move away from ownership and we need to move into stewardship. This is biblical, right? You have to be a good steward of the land. So the next thing is a lot of us, we haven't even asked ourselves, how am I going to transfer my wealth? Right? We're so busy making the money. And I'm not saying that it's, it's a bad thing to make money, right? Making money is important, but you need to think to yourself, how am I going to preserve this money? How am I going to transfer this money? How am I going to conserve this money, right? So the way that you're going to transfer your wealth is through the trust, okay? And now, when you set up your trust is going to establish 100 TCUs. TCUs stands for Trust Certificate Unit. It is just like a stock certificate. So you know how a stock certificate represents ownership in a corporation. A TCU represents beneficial interest in a trust. So you're going to distribute those TCUs to your children. Those are your beneficiaries. So let's just say out of the 100 TCUs, you have 4 children, you distribute 25 TCUs per child, right? So now I'm one of your beneficiaries. I have 25 TCUs. That means that I have 25% of beneficial interest in this trust. Let's just say that the trust is worth $1 million, right? The net worth is $1 million with all of the cash, cars, and real estate, right? So what we're saying is that if I have 25 TCUs, that means that I have 25% of beneficial interest. If the trust is worth $1 million, that means that my beneficial interest is equivalent to 250,000 of that $1 million. That is how you're going to transfer your wealth, because now your children are going to receive the TCUs. If your children transition, guess what? Those TCUs are going to go to your grandchildren. If your grandchildren transition, guess what? Those TCUs are going to go to your great-grandchildren, and it's always going to remain in your bloodline. That is what you need to do. You need to protect your legacy, and you need to ensure that these TCUs are not going to end up in the wrong hands. So you want it to be to where it's only your descendants that qualify to have trust certificate units, okay? So the last thing that I want to mention is about preservation, right? Why is it that we see like all of these celebrities and all these famous families, right? Like all of these famous people, right? Actors, actresses, all of these people that we see on TV, right? Why is it that we see that they, for example, the athletes, right? They have $100 million deal, right? And they're going to blow that $100 million in their lifetime, or it's not even going to reach the second generation. Like it's not going to reach the next generation. 90% of wealth is lost in the second to third generation. Why do you think that is? It's because they don't have the tools for preservation. So there's 2 tools for preservation. The first one is a trust. You need a trust estate, okay? So every trusts are in every single country and every single continent, okay? So it's extremely powerful. Now, you need a trust. You also need the life insurance policies, as I mentioned, okay? Those are the 2 tools that you need for preservation of wealth. Why? Because what happens is your trust has many assets. So your trust has let's just say that your trust has a house, it has homeowners insurance. Your trust has a car, it has automobile insurance. Your trust has cash money, it has FDIC. So your trust has what we call human assets, which are you, your beneficiaries, and your future beneficiaries. So the trust needs to also ensure the human assets, because if anything happens to the human assets, the trust is going to be devastated. So meaning that you are a human asset. Why? Because you're the trustee. Your children, why? Because they're the beneficiaries. So the trust is going to ensure you, the beneficiaries, and the future beneficiaries. And if anything happens to you, then that death benefit goes to the trust, meaning that if you have a death benefit of $2 million and you didn't wake up and the trust is the beneficiary of your life insurance policy, that $2 million goes straight to the trust and the trust is now replenished, right? That is the beginning of preservation of wealth, right? But it's not only the trustee, it's also the beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries. Those future beneficiaries, we call them trust fund babies. Okay, that is where a baby is born into the trust organization. Okay, so when you hear that term floating around out here in society, that's what they're referring to. So there's a baby that's born into the trust organization, and the first thing that the trustee does is it takes out a life insurance policy on that baby when that baby's 30 days old. Okay. And we're going to take out an IUL policy. Why? Because now we're going to earn compound interest for decades and decades and decades and decades. Okay. So do you know how much money is going to be generated from that life insurance policy and that baby is 30 days old compared to us that are 30 years and 40 years and 50 years old? That's a lot of compound interest, right? So let's just say that this trust fund baby, right, that was 30 days old, now the trustee takes out a life insurance policy and is now paying the $100 a month premium, right? Every single month, right? This trust fund baby is going to grow up. Let's just say that this baby grows up and now they're 18 years old, right? What's going to happen? Well, now that this trust fund baby is 18 years old, they are going off to college and they're like, hey, I need a car, right? And so normally what they can do is they'll go down to the dealership, they'll pull their credit, they'll get into a car loan, and they'll start paying $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car. But because they're the trust fund baby, what they can do is instead of going down the traditional route, right? Trust fund babies get to go down another route. Why? Because someone like you decided to set up a trust, right? And put them in a privileged position to where now they can go to the trust and they're going to ask the trustee, hey, I would like to borrow money from the trust and I need to get a car, so I would like to borrow $30,000. So the trustee is going to write a check for $30,000, hand it to the trust fund baby. That trust fund baby is now going to go buy that car cash. And instead of the trust fund baby paying the dealership $1,000, the trust fund baby is now going to pay the trust $300 a month. Why? Because we have to instill some form of responsibility, of budgeting, of financial literacy. They have to be responsible, right? And so they're going to now pay the trust $300 a month. But let's just say that this trust fund baby is irresponsible and they're like, hey, I'm going to default. I don't want to go ahead and pay the trust $300 a month. Well, you have to understand that that was a risk-free loan, right? So it is okay that they defaulted. And the reason being is because the money did not originate from the trust fund. The money actually originated from the trust fund baby's life insurance policy. Remember that life insurance policy that we took out when that baby was 30 days old? Well, the trustee contacted the carrier and asked for a loan for $30,000. And now the carrier obviously took that money out of their reserves and did a direct deposit into the trust fund for the $30,000. And that is how the trustee was able to issue out the check for $30,000 to the beneficiary, also known as the trust fund baby. Okay. Now that trust fund baby defaulted, it is a risk-free loan. Okay, so that loan doesn't need to be paid back. So that's one thing that I want you to know. Every single time that you take out a loan from your life insurance policy, it does not need to be paid back. You are not required to pay it back, okay? Which is absolutely beautiful, because now what's going to happen is that $30,000 is automatically going to be deducted from the death benefit, okay? So when that trust fund baby transitions a couple decades into the future and their death benefit is $5 million, that $5 million minus the 30,000 is going to go straight into the trust fund, and the trust is replenished. And that is what preservation of wealth looks like. And that is the position that we need to put our families in. So that is what you need to do for yourself, as well as your families, as well as all of your descendants, right? That is what true generational wealth looks like. You cannot walk around here talking about you're building generational wealth if you are not structured this way, okay? So let's continue on. So let me show you a quick video on an individual that took action on the information that we shared tonight.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience.
Hold on one second.
The video's stopped.
Kudos to you all again, Christina. It's
Fade
been
it
a
out.
wonderful experience. I've
Yeah,
been
I can
looking
see
at
it now.
your
Thank you.
videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days, and I guess that's the big thing. Don't own anything, control everything. That kind of I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
All right. So take action on the information that I shared with you guys tonight, because it could be your new form of doing business, you guys, okay? So we can actually work together. I do have a program where I teach you step by step how to set up these 3 different types of trust, right? Which is the family trust, the business trust, and the tax exempt trust, right? So you have 3 options here. The first one is do it yourself, where you can actually get into our online courses on demand. You get lifetime access. So there's 43 plus video modules in there. And the way that the course is designed is for you to download the trust templates. Then you can actually, you're able to watch the video modules and set up the trust yourselves, okay? Another thing is that you get resources and ebooks, right? So there's a couple of ebooks that I recommend that you guys read. And it comes with the program, and some of these books are, worth $700-800, right? And you get the electronic version. And then the resources is anything that you need in order to operate your trust. Meaning, if you need to file taxes, we give you the forms. If you need to open up your bank account, we give you the forms. If you need to transfer your house into the trust, we give you the forms. If you need to transfer your business into the trust, we give you the forms. If you need to transfer your cars, if you need to have a board meeting, right? Every single thing that you can think of, we provide you with all of those resources so that you can actually operate this trust efficiently and effectively. We also have a community. So we have over 2,200 trustees in our community. You have access to them. So we have a private Facebook community. We also have a Telegram chat where you're able to chat with them back and forth. A lot of these people, they are, 1, they're like-minded, but 2, they are in your same city and state, right? And so these are people that are in the same situation as you, to where they've been operating their trust for 4 to 5 years now. They have their houses, their businesses, their cars into the trust. And so they are also going to be a resource for you. Okay. So if you want to learn how to do it yourself, the course is only $997. The second option is Done With You, where you get 5 group Zoom calls. So just like how we're on Zoom right now, you get the 5 group Zoom calls, and it's in a workshop style setting. So with the workshop, we show up Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Monday, we show you how to set up the business trust. So I break down every single paragraph of the trust live with you, okay? And then after I break down the paragraphs of the trust and I teach you every single thing that's inside of this trust, then I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A so I can answer all of your questions. So instead of you sitting confused, you get clarity on the spot, okay? And that is what we do on Mondays. On Tuesdays, we set up the family trust together. So same concept. We go through the whole entire indenture. I break down all of the provisions, all of the terms and conditions so that you can learn what's inside of the trust, okay? Then we open up the floor for Q&A. On Wednesday, I show you how to set up the charitable nonprofit trust. And then I break down every single paragraph. You learn the ins and outs. Then I show you how to get your tax exempt EIN number, and if you want to operate it as a ministry, how to go through the online ordination process. So with that being said, that is on Wednesdays, right? And so you have to understand that if you are in this environment, you are in a group workshop Zoom call with other like-minded individuals, and they are asking really good questions. So they're asking you questions that you didn't even know that you wanted to know. So you end up learning more by just being in this environment that we cultivate for you, okay? Thursday is all about OPM, right? So we have structured the entire wealth building formula for you in 5 days, okay? So it's all about OPM, where you learn about how to open up a bank account, banking operations and procedures, how to have a board meeting. We give you the list of banks and the paperwork that you need to take with you. And then we focus on you documenting how much you're going to fund the trust with. And then our educator comes in and teaches you about business credit and business funding so that you can get the funding you need in order to acquire the assets for the trust, okay? And then we dive into Q&A. And then the last day of the workshop is Friday, where we focus on asset protection. So we are going to take an inventory of our assets, and then I teach you how to transfer your house into the trust, how to transfer your car into the trust, and how to transfer your business into the trust. And then our educator comes in and teaches you about trust taxes and how to fill out the trust forms and answers all of your questions. Okay, so that's our CPA. And then, and so that's the workshop. It's 5 days, and you get lifetime access to the workshop. We do the workshop every 4 weeks. So our next workshop is, it starts on March 16th, and you get lifetime access to attend every single month. So you can attend in March live, you can attend in April live, you can attend in May live, in 2027 and 2028 live, okay? We also record the Zoom calls, so you get access to the recordings as well, because during the sessions, sometimes you might have to, go attend to something and you jumped off for 30 minutes, and so you're able to review what you missed while you were away. So with that being said, you get accountability with the workshop, right? We hold your hand through the whole entire process, and that sense of security to know that you're actually setting up your trust the right way. So the workshop is only $2,500. And then the last option is done for you, where me and my team are able to build out your entire structure for you. That means that we're going to set up all 3 of your trusts for you. We're going to apply for your EIN so that you can open up your bank accounts. We're going to transfer all of your assets for you, okay? So the house, the business, the car, everything, right? You get individualized support, you get a private session with me, and then you get to customize your trust, right, for your specific structure. So the first thing that we do is we go through your structure so that you can get restructured. So we hold your hand through the whole process. You also get extended support as well. So it's extremely powerful, okay? So with that being said, the done for you is the private sessions are only $7,500, right? And hold on one second. Let me see here. Oh my goodness. So if you guys are interested, then all you have to do is just go to our website. So our website is wealthytrustee.com. So hold on one second. Let me show you. Let me go back here.
Christina, I'm
Yes.
just going to ask, when you have the international, when you've sorted out the international people, will the price be the same or will it differ?
It's going to be different.
Okay. And do you know yet when your international program will start? Would it be like middle of the year or the end of the year?
Yes, it's going to be in quarter 3.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. All right, guys. So this is as I mentioned, this is our website, wealthytrustee.com. So as far as the value goes, right, 3 trusts will cost you anywhere around $15,000, right? Tax strategies like this that our CPA teaches you will cost you anywhere between $42,000, right? Building credit for your trust will cost you around $5,000, right? Transferring your assets over $5,000, right? In order for you to get investments for your trust, like the IULs and real estate, right? Just for you to learn that is over $8,000, right? For you to be able to learn infinite banking with the life insurance policies, right? That's over $10,000, right? And for you to have a community, right, where you have access to like-minded individuals that have already done what you want to do, over $10,000, right? But the impact that you have on your generation is invaluable, right? And so that's why it's so important for us to be able to take action on the information, because this is going to be our new way of doing business. Why? Because we're getting restructured. Now we're going to have a nonprofit and a for-profit within our structure, right? Now we're going to have ways that we get to save on taxes. Now we're going to have a strategy so that we can protect our assets, because it's just going to take one lawsuit for you to lose it all, right? And so you want to be able to take action on this information, and for you to treat it seriously, right? You want to treat it like a big business. You want to treat it like you are running Tesla, Facebook, Amazon, right? Not like you're running some little small mom and pop shop, right? You need to be able to operate your family like a business, where you are the CEO of your family, where your spouse is the CFO of your family. That is so important, right? And so, as I mentioned, this is our contact information, right? So there's a website. If you want to email us, you can email us in info@sevenwaystowealth.com. And then you can also call us or text us at 305-749-9215. So now what I want to do is I want to show you what an actual trust looks like. So let me jump back in here. So this is what an actual one of our templates look like, okay? So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing, okay? So remember, as I mentioned in the workshop, right? I break down every single paragraph in the course as well, right? So when you sign up for the workshop, you also get the course. If you sign up for Done For You, you also get the course, okay? So I break down every single paragraph so that you can understand the contents. There's no way for you to be able to run a trust efficiently and effectively without you knowing what's inside of the trust. That's why I spend hours and hours and hours and hours training you to teach you what is inside of the trust, so that you know the do's and the don'ts, right? And you operate it effectively. But then I also build up your confidence for you to know, yes, I can operate as a trustee. Yes, I know I'm doing things the right way. Yes, I have the right paperwork. Yes, I'm doing the protocol correctly, right? So it's super important. So now let me show you quickly what the course looks like. So this is the actual course. This is what you get access to when you enroll. And we have trust entity after your induction. You have the trust entity where you learn what a trust is. So we pretty much we break it down as if you're a third grader. We're super, super, super thorough, okay? So you learn who is the grantor, who's the trustees, the beneficiaries, the successors, the protectors, the benefits of having a trust and the different types. You learn how to set up the ministry trust, right? You learn how to set up the family trust. You learn how to set up the business trust. Then we go into tax strategies where you learn how to operate tax exempt. You learn how to avoid tax evasion. That's not what we're doing here, okay? And then asset protection. You take an inventory of your asset, then you learn how to create your bank account, your brokerage accounts, and how to transfer your house, your car, your insurance policies, your businesses, and how to have board meetings. Your meetings for your trust are the life of your trust. How many people do you know that they're operating LLCs and corporations and they never had a meeting? right? So we teach you how to do things the right way. Then we go into wealth creation where you learn how to build the business credit, where you learn how to invest in stocks, and you learn how to do the infinite banking with the life insurance policies. You learn about the legacy crest, and then you have all of your resources and all of your ebooks. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A so I can answer any and all questions that you guys might have. So do you guys have any questions based off of the information that I went over today? I know that it was a lot, but I'm so grateful that you guys decided to stay on throughout the whole webinar. All right. I'm not sure how to pronounce, is it energy? Like energy?
Yes, it's energy.
Energy. Awesome. That's beautiful. I like that. It's very out of the box.
Thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, the lady prior mentioned something about the international trust.
Uh-huh.
So is that something that would be, you could operate internationally, or is it going to be specific to the jurisdiction? Like, how does that?
So you can operate it in all jurisdictions. So that is a separate program that we are going to be launching this year. It is an international program where we're going to be teaching you about offshoring, which is how to create an international trust outside of the jurisdiction of the United States, how to open up a Swiss bank account for that international trust, and how to acquire real estate abroad. So we have partners that are located in various different countries and various different continents. And we show you how to acquire property over there, investment properties.
Okay,
So
because I'm
that's,
not in America at the moment. I'm outside of the US. So that's
oh,
why I wanted to ask.
okay. Are you a citizen or you're not a citizen?
I am a citizen of
Okay.
Canada.
Of Canada?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so in order to operate a trust in the United States, you don't have to be a citizen.
You don't have to be a citizen?
You do not.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, but okay.
Yeah, you don't have to be a citizen in order to have a trust in the United States.
I guess if and no one else has any questions yet, I also wanted to ask, when you have the whole life insurance, when would you be able to start making withdrawals?
That's a wonderful question. It depends on your carrier. It depends on how your life insurance is structured. So it is highly important that your policy is structured the right way. So the way that we structure it is high cash value, low death benefit. That is where it's going to give you access to your cash value sooner rather than later. And with the life insurance carriers, they have a surrender charge. So your surrender charge needs to be fulfilled before you're able to borrow from your cash value. So let's just say that your surrender charge is $2,000. It's basically a security deposit where if you cancel your policy before 2 years, then you lose the surrender charge. If you don't cancel your policy, then after that 2 year mark, your surrender charge, they surrender it back to you, and that money goes straight into your cash value. So it's like a security deposit. So you have to be fully paid on your surrender charge before you can access the cash value.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Somebody had another question about the index universal life is the same as whole life. If not, what is the difference? That's a wonderful question. So, whole life and index universal life, they're very similar. They insure your entire life, which is good, right? So that means that they insure you up until death. Now, the difference is that with whole life, they both have cash value, but with whole life, you're going to earn dividends, right? So that means that you are going to get a lower return And usually you're going to get a dividends of maybe like 3 to 4% every single year. So your money is still going to grow, but it's going to grow at a lower rate, basically, like 3 to 4% versus an index universal life. It's not called dividends, it's called compound interest, and that is based off of the performance of the market. Okay. And so if the market is doing 0, you're going to get 0. Or maybe we'll put a floor on there and you'll get 1%, right? But if the market is doing 12%, you're going to get 12%, which is good, right? 12% for your cash value is better than 3% in a whole life, right? But both policies are really good. So it just depends on you as the individual to see which policy will best fit your needs. Okay. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking that. We have Michael. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hey, Christina, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thanks for this presentation again. Now, I have a question regarding the notarization of the documents, correct? So, if we have the private family trust and we have it notarized, would that make the trust public since the notary would be a public official?
So what makes the trust public is for you to register all those pages. So let's just say that your trust is 50 pages. If you go to the state and register it, it's public. Everyone can see all 50 pages. That's what makes it public. Now, if you don't want to use a notary public, that's fine. You can also legalize it with 2 witnesses.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking that question, Michael. Next, we have Front Capital.
Hello, can you hear me?
Perfect. How are you?
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Estoy bien. ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo
Sí,
estás?
todo bien, todo bien, todo bien. I just wanted to just come online to say I appreciate the information that you guys are giving out, and me personally, I understand what you're doing, and I respect what you're doing, giving the information out, and it's very, very president was for what's going on now. I just want to say 3 things, and I don't want to keep the floor too long, right? So, the first thing I want to say is like number 1 point, vertical integrated structures, right? Number 2, private equity, and number 3, trust. So when I say that, I just wanted to present that I notice a lot of people in these spaces that they get to a point where they're not, how can I say, non-performing. If you understand what I'm saying, they don't want to perform. They don't want to, do anything. But when you get to a place in life where that you feel like, and you know that you still have more to offer, is that, you have to put yourself in a place where, okay, well, I can perform, but if you're in a position where you have a vertical integrated structure where you own everything, contracting, you get what I'm saying? And everything else, it makes sense. So I say that just to, and not to hold the floor too long, but say that in the sense that I really appreciate what you're saying as far as information and what you're giving. It just, I just want to say that as far as okay, as I'm structured and how I'm moving, in the sense that, here in America, there's something called the Bureau of Trust Fund Administration, right? Foundationally, where instead of being on the defense of, opposing, let me turn this music down 1 second. Instead of being on the defense of opposing what they are coming against us with, there's a lot available to us here in America, especially us here born in America, as far as like when I say the Bureau of Trust Fund Administration, where we challenge them to pull those records, those trust records. And then when you have a vertical integrated structure in place where you're performing, it just makes more sense for them to allocate whatever funds that, as you're saying, that in those trusts to allocate to us, because as you know, when we deal in the trust, it's like, okay, there's certain stipulations, especially when you're dealing with generational trust, you're dealing with trust from 1500, 1600, 1700. There's stipulations that a lot of us don't know about, but when you moving and okay, well, this is how I'm moving, and then you understand that there's certain stipulations where if I trigger that, it can be allocated. So, make a long story short, I appreciate the information you're giving, and let's see how we can work in the future. So, I appreciate you, Christina, right? Christina Yvette, right?
Yes, that's me. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here this evening.
Yeah. Straight up.
Yes,
Okay.
it sounds like you are a wealth of information and knowledge. So, if you just get the contact
I'm a homeless
information.
student. I'm a homeless student.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we could definitely have a discussion. So the contact information is inside of the chat, and I look forward to hearing from you. Okay.
100.
All right. Thank you. All right. And let me see if there's any other questions. It doesn't look like it. So we are going to wrap up. We're going to wrap up our webinar for this evening. It was supposed to be an hour and a half, and now we're like two hours in. So I just want to tell you guys that the information that you guys got today is just only scratching the surface, right? So trust is like it's very in depth, and it's something that you want to take serious because you can change the trajectory of your life. You can change the trajectory of your children's lives, right? Your children that are beneficiaries, they are future trustees. And so you are able to raise them in that manner and instill those principles in them to where they own nothing but control everything, right? And so just imagine what you're going to be doing for your bloodline. So I know that everybody on the call here is what I love to call a generational curse breaker, right? And it takes that one person in the family to decide to break those chains. It takes that one person in the family to decide to create the legacy, to create the trust, right? It takes that one person, which is you. And I know that it is you because that person was me, right? And so everybody who gravitates towards me is just like me. Like attracts like. So you are the generational curse breaker in your family that is going to change the trajectory and the lineage of the family. So I commend you. I'm proud of you for just being here on the call. And just remember, right? A lot of us sometimes we want to sit on the information, but that's not what you want to do, right? You don't want to just sit on the information, you want to apply it, right? So we got some knowledge tonight, right? And knowledge is good, but you want to apply the knowledge, right? So just take action. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. If you guys have any questions, you can send an email to info@7waystowealth. And if you can send us a text message too, or you can call us at 305-749-9215. Luciano, you have a question? Is it Luciano?
Yeah,
Luciano.
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 Yes. I had a question. If me and my brother we created a business, so so now our next step is to create a business trust. Does it have to be I mean, is it both of us or do we have to have like a grantor, a different person do that trust?
Yeah, so it just depends on if you're creating it revocable or not, or irrevocable. If it's irrevocable and you want to maintain control, then a different person has to be the grantor. You cannot be the grantor and the trustee.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Energy has a question.
Yes, just I noticed that you referred to the real estate like real estate. So I was wondering if does this apply for like all businesses, or is it just like are you just invested in real estate, like teaching, the strategy for real estate or
So a business trust is for all businesses.
okay. It's just that you emphasize on real estate, so I just wanted to ask.
So I'm giving real estate as an example of a way to acquire assets. So it actually
Okay,
has nothing to do with business. So when I was referring to business, I said LLCs and corporations. And so it's whatever type of business that you are operating. It could be a brick and mortar business. It could be an online business, retail, e-com, trucking company. It's for any and all types of businesses. So it just depends on the type of business. So there's some specific things like some businesses have licenses, some businesses are in healthcare. There has to be like a doctor. So there's little minute things for certain businesses, but overall, it works generally for all businesses that are LLCs and corporations.
great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this presentation.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
For being here. All right, guys, you guys have a wonderful evening. I hope to welcome you into the program. And our next workshop is March 16th. You guys have a beautiful rest of your day. And